sex, and war anywhere on the planet, minute by minute, day by day, all of the time, all of the time, all of the time.
Alrighty, welcome to the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. and co-host Mr. Bobby. We are live from 9 a.m. until 11 a.m. Eastern Time. And if you would like to call into the show, you can do so by calling 516-453-9921. Let me repeat that again. If you'd like to call into the show, do so by calling 516-453-9921. You're listening to it on ProduceJustice.com, and you can go to that website for any information to the show, ordering textbooks and all types of information concerning this show, which is the Counter Racist Code Show, and I do have permission to call it the CRCS for those that don't have, who may have problems just saying the show out, just say CRCS. That is the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. and me, co-host Mr. Bobby. Okay, you can also contact the show by Gmailing me at the numero 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, @gmail.com, and I will try to get to your Gmails. There are a lot of them, and Mr. Fuller will answer each one of them when we get to them. Okay. Let me start off, as usual, by saying good morning, Mr. Fuller, and how are you?
Good morning. I'm still learning.
Okay. Starting off, the Counter Racist Code Show. Some people may not understand what you mean by that, Mr. Fuller, so that we can get started, and there are a lot of people that are new to the show. What do you mean when you say Counter Racist Code?
Well, I mean that we should have a counter-racist code. We have, in the universe, something called a racist code in the form of what we call the system of white supremacy. And that's the white supremacists are people who believe in mistreating people based on color, dominating and mistreating people based on color, or people who are classified as white and who have that belief and who have activated that belief in a practical sense in all 9 areas of activity: economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. Now, when it started, I don't know, but it has been the most powerful religious and political government, or you might say force, among the people of the planet Earth for as far back as anybody who is now in existence can remember and or has experienced. And it means just explicitly dominating and mistreating people based on color. That's what racism is. Dominating and mistreating people. You first have to dominate people, or while you're dominating people, you are mistreating them, meaning you are anti-justice. You believe in racism, that automatically means you are anti-justice. You're pro-racism, you are anti-justice. Justice meaning that you guarantee that people will be mistreated and dominated, and that the people who need help the most will not get that help, because if you're mistreating people, those people need help. All people who are being mistreated need help. But the system of racism is opposed to helping people who need help the most, and in favor of mistreating those people and doing it forever without stop in all of the areas of activity 24/7 all over the planet. And they have a code for doing this. That's a racist code. Code meaning it's not necessarily a secret code. They're kind of open with it. They brag about it in many cases. And it's just a way of getting it done. So that's what the racist code is about. And there's only one type of race code in effect now, here in the year 2020, and that is the system of white supremacy itself.
Alrighty. Before we go to the Gmails, we do have a caller on the line. Chow is on the line. Chow, if you can hear me, go ahead with your call, with your question for Mr. Fuller.
Good morning, Mr. Fuller. I'd like to ask 2 questions, if I may.
Yes, sir.
Okay. The first question is, you have said in the past that we should have no contact, no conflict, and on another note, you have said that if there's some aggression your way, you should distance yourself between you and the aggression. Put distance between you and the aggression. So my question is, if racism is a worldwide issue, it has no boundaries, no borders or anything like that, but racism is more aggressive in the northwestern hemisphere, wouldn't it be logical to go somewhere where it is less aggressive, even though you can't escape racism altogether? Would it not be logical to be somewhere where there is less aggression in the form of racism?
Well, if in answer to the question, if I understand it, it means you put distance between you and any person who is trying to mistreat you as best you possibly can. So it is logical to do that, whether it's 2 feet away or 20 miles away or 2,000 miles away. If you can relieve the aggression, the effects of the aggression. It's like someone taking a knife and trying to stab you. You put distance between yourself and that person until you're at what they call a safe enough distance that you don't lose your existence on the planet. And you do that if you possibly can. But now, the white supremacists are everywhere, but some places, you're correct, are better than others, if not permanently, at least for a little while. And that's the best you can expect. You can move from one place to another, but it won't be long before the races, if they decide to, it may be, they make that decision because you're in their world prison. So if they decide to come to your cell, you might say, because you are in a cell wherever you are, because you have limited mobility. That comes out recently in the newspapers even. People who are trying to immigrate, as they call it, trying to get from one place to another. And if they are people of color, they have great difficulty doing this, because the white supremacist says, you don't move until I let you move. You don't go anywhere until I let you go. You have to get my permission to move from where you are, wherever you are. In particular, if you're coming somewhere or going somewhere where I don't want you to be. So even if you put a little distance between yourself and the prison masters, you have to do that with their permission. If you try to do it on your own, you're not getting anywhere, because one thing, if you look at the way the world is run under the system of white supremacy, if you're a person of color, if you're going to go from one place to another, the white supremacists have to take you there anyway. And if you try to get there on your own, they have to welcome you when you get there. They have to okay the position, the place where you're going to be. If you're going to a particular island, the white supremacists say, you're going to my island. There's no place that is neutral. Every place is mine, if it's anywhere in the known universe, including outer space. or inner space or in the stratosphere or anything that you want to call it. If it's a place that you know about, I certainly know about it. That's the voice of the white supremacists. If you're a person of color, and so you have to get my permission to go there anyway, which means I already dominate that place that you're going. I know all about that place because I'm going to have to take you there. You've never been there, or if you have been there, it was still mine since the beginning of the system of white supremacy. So yes, in answer to the question, you can put distance between yourself and a certain environment that the races had you in. But to make it explicit, it's the same as moving from one part of a penitentiary, of a prison camp, which is what they have made the world into, to another part of the same prison camp. Some prison camps are better than others. That is true.
Okay.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I wanted to hear. My second question is probably going to stir up a lot of conversation, and I guess that's what the point is. The sexual factor of dealing with suspect racists. I'm currently having a very difficult time dealing with fellow victims of racism in terms of the relationship / sexual aspect. Now, I've heard you say on many speeches that when you're in a slave ship and the white supremacist comes to you and tells you that they want you to do a certain type of work, and you either do that work or you don't get fed today. And then in this case, you say, okay, well, they want me to have some type of sexual contact with them. And if I don't have the sexual contact, then I don't eat. So in my experience, I'm having a difficult time getting fellow victims to be, I want to say, constructive, cooperative, and I'm getting more results being non-constructive in a relationship or sexual manner with victims. You say that there should be no contact or no sexual contact with suspect white supremacists until the system of racism is over. But in my opinion, it won't be over until there's no more of them on the planet. I mean, this is just my opinion. So would you advise, or would it be against code if a victim understands their position in the system, understands that they're being taken advantage of or being abused, but having sexual relations with the white supremacists or the suspected white supremacists to better their situation, to ease their pain, to be more, I should say less stressed, because trying to deal with fellow victims becomes more stressful than dealing with suspects with the knowledge that you already are being taken advantage of. Like, I'm accepting the fact that I'm in a system, I'm accepting the fact that I'm taken advantage of, but it's less stressful for me because I am, going into it aware rather than looking for some cooperation or constructive behavior from a fellow victim and not getting it, and it's becoming more depressing than being used by the suspects.
If I understand the question, that goes with the territory. You're a prisoner of war. That's the best way to put it. That's something I've been doing recently in the last 3 or 4 years, emphasizing, even though it is in the textbook and has been there for years, I've been emphasizing that for the last 2 or 3 years because people understand it better. When I put it in the frame of reference, that really is true. If you're black on the planet Earth, you are a prisoner of war. Already a prisoner. They're not looking to capture you. You've been captured. You were captured before you were born. When you were in the womb, you were in captivity because the person that delivered you into the prison system was in captivity. So you're born in prison. If you're a black person on the planet Earth, you're born in prison, and the name of that prison is the system of white supremacy. So therefore, you go along with the prison system that you were born in. So other people will go along with it. If you try to tell other people about it, you can tell other people about all of your situation, what your situation is for all of you. I do that. I'm doing that now. I'm in the same situation. Now, a lot of people will say, well, I embrace it since I'm in it, and, I don't know what it's all about, but these are the cards that I'm dealt. I'm in prison, so I go along with the prison system. So you don't really try to convince someone that, that they should be hostile towards the system. You just tell them that you should be hostile toward the system because the system is hostile toward you. You shouldn't be mistreated because of the way that the Creator made you, because that's what the white supremacists do. They look at a black person and say, something made you what you are. But I don't particularly like what was made. You got color in your skin, and I don't like that. That offends me greatly. And the black person says, well, you might be offended, but I didn't have anything to do with being black and all like that. And they say, yeah, buddy, I know, I understand. I'm not that dumb. You didn't have anything to do with it, but you're here, and you offend me. Your very presence offends me. I don't care what you do. I don't care how nice you are and all like that. You just got color in your skin. And I got a serious problem with that. And so you would tell the person, well, you have non-color. You're white, and I'm black. And, and that's the way you're made, and that's the way I'm made. And whatever put us here in this planet, our bodies are suitable for this environment for the most part, yours and mine, because we're here, we're breathing. Something made us and put us here. So why can't we just get along? Now, that's the black person talking to the white person, like we do. That's my position. Why can't we get along? Rodney King was correct about that. But they say, oh, yeah, but hey, you're not listening to me, buddy. I mean, you offend me with the color of your skin. You are offensive. Can't you get that through your thick head? And I just got to do harm to you. That's the only thing that makes me feel good. That's the only thing that makes me feel good. When I go and hunt you down and do harm to you, then I feel good. I got feelings. I like to feel good. I don't like to feel bad. And your very presence makes me feel bad on this planet. That's the deal, buddy. I don't know. I just can't help it. So you look at the person in amazement, really, which you should, and say, oh, you're not making sense, on account of my color? Yes, on account of your color. Say, well, your beef is really not with me, it's with my Creator. Is that what you're saying? Well, my beef is with you, because you can, just, now, if you do what I say do, and go and come as I say, and let me mistreat you without complaining, then that makes me feel better. Now, how about that, buddy? That makes me feel better. That's just the way it is. I don't know why it's that way, but I feel better when I do that. I feel great when I do a real good job of harming you and people that look like you.
Wow.
Now, for the entire audience throughout the world, if you understand that type of mentality, you got everything in a nutshell right there. I may have deviated from the question somewhat, but I think that explanation was necessary for us to get the focus, because you say that you have difficulty trying to explain to people what this is all about. It's just that simple. It's not complicated at all. A person takes a look at a black person and say, you offend me with your color. Your very presence, your very existence, even when I'm not looking at you, and I have to think about you exist. That offends me. The very thought that you exist on this planet or in my universe. You got color in your skin, and that offends me as a white person like you wouldn't believe. And even when you're not around, I'll come and find you somewhere. I'll go seeking you out, even when you're trying to hide from me. And it makes me feel good to mistreat you. That's just the way it is. I can't help it. That's just the way it is.
All right.
I appreciate your answer, Mr. Fuller. I appreciate the guest allowing you to elaborate, or I'm sorry, the co-host allowing you to elaborate on what you're saying. I just want to make clear that everyone listening, everyone that might be listening to the recording, this is a very, very weird situation, because every day that we wake up, before we walk out of our house or out of our corner or out of wherever we are, we a lot of times forget that we are in a system until we actually come encounter with people that constantly remind us. And when you make these analogies and you tell these stories, it is totally logical, relatable to me, but it is totally ridiculous that no one else, well, not no one else, but most people don't want to acknowledge the fact that this is an ongoing existence until there's no more white people. As long as there's white people, we're going to exist into this system, and there won't be any other way until there's just, like-minded people or like people on the planet.
All right. Thank you so much, Sean, for calling in, and don't be a stranger, okay?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. All righty. Let's continue in. You're listening to the Counter-Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., and I'm your co-host, Mr. Bobby. To get in contact with the show, call 516-453-9921. That's 516-453-9921, and Mr. Fuller will address or answer your question. Let's go to the Gmail while we have this time here. This comes from Jane Lance, and I do have permission to use her name, as she has said that I could do that. So thank you, Jane. Mr. Fuller, she says this. She said, before I ask a question, I would like to express some VGQ. Thank you, Mr. Fuller, for writing your book. It has and will continue to help me and others make logical decisions and produce justice. Thank you, Mr. Bobby, for hosting and getting Mr. Fuller's message to the people each week. She says, Mr. Fuller, on page 191 in the area of politics, people relations, I have been using the given responses when people try to include me in conversations that are not constructive. I've also received pushback and attitude for choosing to remain silent when I don't have any anything constructive to say. Sad but true, most of the people giving me a hard time are elder relatives. I have been accused of being quiet because I'm angry with them, acting stuck up, being sad, or going through something. Mr. Fuller, I love my care unit, but they act as if they are obsessed with dysfunction. Mr. Fuller, should I practice no contact, no conflict, and stop speaking to them until they get on code? They know what the code is, but don't follow it. Thank you, Jane Lance.
It shouldn't be any problem. None whatsoever in communications. I don't see, it's an error here somewhere. You should be able to communicate with anybody, white or non-white, any time of day or night, in a constructive manner. That's all it is, constructive, non-constructive. Everything that people do on the planet, regardless of what people they are, what they're doing is either constructive or non-constructive. The black people of this planet, the white people of this planet for that matter, should be focusing on just one thing, separating that which is constructive from that which is non-constructive in all of our behaviors. That's all. And I don't see how anybody can have a problem with constructive conversation. And constructive conversation consists of asking questions and getting answers about what? Problem solving. Now, terms like I heard the term stuck up. See, you ask a question about that. If somebody says you're stuck up, you say, what do you mean? You just ask a question. What do you mean by I'm stuck up? And don't try to help them with the answer. When you ask a question, that's part of the code. You don't help the person with the answer. You let the person figure out the answer to the question that's being asked about something that they said. That's something they said. So they should be able to explain what they mean. You're stuck up, meaning, stick 'em up. I mean, that's what a person that robs you says. Stick 'em up, meaning your hands. Put 'em in the air, I guess. So, but if they say it means something else, let them explain what it means. And then you ask a question. Okay, do you want me to be not stuck up? And they say, yeah. I'm tired of you being so stuck up. And after they explain to you what that means, then you ask another question, a logical question. Well, what is it you want me to do? So I will not be, quote unquote, stuck up. What do you want me to say? I'll say it. I'm just trying to get along. I'm trying, like Rodney King says, can't we get along? First of all, right here at our care unit, what we call our family associations, or what we call our close friends, quote unquote, whatever that means, or your work associates, the people who, when you go to work, the people that you associate with at the lunch table and whatnot, just let them tell you how they want you to be, and then explain why they want you to be that way and what the result is supposed to be. Because everything is constructive and non-constructive, that's all. And, you can always be relaxed, as they say. If they say that you're too, a person might say, well, you're not stuck up, but you're uptight. That's another term.
Mm-hmm.
It don't seem like you're relaxed. Okay, well, what do you want me to do so that I will seem like I'm relaxed? Just ask questions. How do they want you to be? And after they tell you how they want you to be, then you ask them, now, the way that I am right now that I am the way that you want me to be, is this constructive or non-constructive? And you can also ask yourself that question. Because ultimately, you are going to have to ask yourself that question.
Mm-hmm.
If I am the way that you want me to be, do you think that I am now in a constructive mode? And more importantly, do I think that now that I'm different from the way that I was before you told me to change, am I now a more constructive person? And if the answer is yes, stay in that mode. You're not looking for a fight. You're trying to get along with people. White people, non-white people, male, female, old people, young people. And what do you mean by get along? You're trying to be constructive.
Yes, sir.
People who are not constructive, that's not getting along in a constructive manner. I mean, anytime you're doing anything non-constructive, it's always constructive, non-constructive. And anybody who has hostility toward constructive activity needs to change. That person needs to change.
Mm-hmm.
I need to change. Everybody needs to change from non-constructive to constructive. That's it.
Yes.
There's no such things in between.
All righty. We coming up here on the break here. So let me say this: you are listening to the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. and I'm your co-host, Mr. Bobby, and we'll be back after this short break. All right. Mr. Gatewood, are you still there? Mr. Gatewood, are you still there?
You're live.
Oh, okay. All righty. Welcome back to the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. and yours truly as co-host, Mr. Bobby. This is the platform where you can ask any question, and Mr. Fuller will do that. And you can do that also by going to producejustice.com. That's producejustice.com. And all the information about the show and about what you need to do is on that particular website. That's producejustice.com. And to get in contact with the show, you can call 516-453-9921. And if you would like to Gmail me and have Mr. Fuller answer your question, it is 7mrbobby@gmail.com. Now, I may not be able to read it right today, but anything that you Gmail me will be read when it is your time, and Mr. Fuller will be happy to answer your question. Okay, so this is the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. and your co-host, Mr. Bobby, right here. And you're listening to it on producejustice.com. Go to that website. We will ask Mr. Fuller here in a few moments about his books and other materials that you can get by going to producejustice.com. Very important. I have my books in front of me. Okay, Mr. Fuller, before I go to a question, you were mentioning about, the code, or a code. We must establish a code. And on page 171 of the revised expanded edition, page 171, there are 4 things that we must do every day. Do you have that book in front of you, a page in front of you, Mr. Fuller?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Before we go to the next question, could you just go over that? Remember that there are people that are just coming in contact with the show, haven't heard this, need to hear this. We will talk about, have you explain that when we talk about your book. But in closing out the last question, what are the 4 wants that are listed on that page that we have to do every day?
That's under politics, area 6. Meaning politics, meaning people interaction. That's all politics is. One person interacting with another. That's political. So it says on page 171, every day, all day, wherever you are, ask yourself these 4 basic questions. This is addressed to the individual. This should be a part of your code to do constructive things, to stay in a constructive mode, in a constructive lane. Number 1, What do I want to do? It's four wants. The word want, W-A-N-T-S. The first one. What do I want to do? What do I want to do? Meaning yourself. You ask yourself this question.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, why do I want to do what I want to do? You should have a reason for doing whatever it is you want to do. You give yourself that reason. You're not talking to somebody else. You're talking to yourself. What do I want to do? Why do I want to do what I want to do? Number three, how do I plan to do what I want to do? If you want to do something and you got a reason for doing it, you should have a plan for doing it. Even if, how are you going to catch the bus next Monday? You move to a new neighborhood, all right? How do I plan to do that? Number four, what do I expect the constructive result to be? Now, those are four universal questions. I say they're universal because they apply to everybody every minute of the day. Not only people, but insects, birds, bees, elephants, creatures of all kinds. Creatures want to do something. The elephant wants to walk from one section of the forest to another section. So what does the elephant do? Make a plan for doing so. And why does the elephant want to go from one part of the forest to another? Probably because there's more food over there, in most cases. And what does the elephant expect the constructive result to be? Well, he eats more food, or she, and becomes stronger and healthier, and can produce offspring that are stronger and healthier, and just keep doing that. That's the elephant's code. Code just means how you get something done. That's all code is, doing it in the most efficient manner. So these wants apply to that, and they apply to everybody. So you can ask yourself every day all these questions. Why do I want to do this thing that I say I want to do? And the main question that you ask is that last one. What do I expect the constructive result to be?
Yes, sir.
Right now, somebody's got a gun in their waistband. Now, they plan, this is the plan, to rob the next person that comes around the corner. Okay? Now, what do you expect the constructive result to be? If this is your plan, and maybe this is your plan for the next 10 years.
Yes, sir.
Now, what do you expect the constructive result to be based on the track record of people who do that? See, this is the way black people should start thinking.
Yes, sir.
Not just what's going on right this minute, but are you making a 10-year plan? Because you better be making a 50 or 60-year plan when you start thinking like that. Because you better be planning on something happening to you that shouldn't happen, that you don't want to happen, all right? And maybe that should happen if you're out here robbing people on the street. What do you want to do? Why do you want to do it? How do you plan to do it? What do you expect the constructive result to be?
Okay.
That's universal questions.
All right.
Codified.
Codified. Okay, that's on page 171 of the Revised Expanded Edition, which we will talk about. The textbook, which we will talk about in a very few moments. Let's go to the Gmails. By the way, you can call in by calling 516-453-9921 for any question that you have for Mr. Fuller. We're speaking about code and being codified, and Mr. Fuller is, as my grandfather used to say, learning us. I like that. Learning you something so that you can apply that, to your life. Okay, Wesley asked this, Mr. Fuller. He says, Mr. Fuller, do you believe black fraternities, quote, code of conduct, end of quote, that they use as a guide to their frats' behavior and actions is a constructive organization for black males to consider. This can apply also to the Code of Conduct the NOI utilized. I think that is the Nation of Islam, utilize in their daily behavior as well. In other words, is, quote, living and involving any code or a group's code of conduct into one's own life more constructive than not having any code of conduct at all to live by, end of quote.
Everybody should have a constructive code, meaning everything that you do and say. Because a code for a person would be thought, speech, action. First you think. Whatever created the universe created people, and people are equipped with a head on their bodies, and that head houses a brain, and that brain is designed to do thinking, something called thinking. And the thoughts should be always producing something that has constructive value. That's what the thoughts should be designed to do, mostly in the form of problem solving. Why? Because the planet that we have been given, which we call our residence for everybody who's on the planet, has a lot of problems. Now, how this turned out to be this way or why it is this way, I have to honestly say I don't know. But whatever created the planet Earth, put people on the planet Earth, and gave those people, myself included, problems to solve. What problems? The ones that are right in front of you. You know you have problems. You might fall down as a baby and you feel pain. So you have a problem there. Okay? So the baby tries to keep from falling down because the baby finds from experience that when it falls down and bumps its head, you feel something called pain. The body is made that way. Now, pain is something like a little alarm bell. It lets you know that something happened that caused that pain, and you need to do some thinking to see to it that that pain doesn't come back. So you learn how to walk without falling. So that, because you know from experience that when you fall, you just may injure yourself to the point where you feel pain. So it's that way the whole time you're on the planet. You problem solve. And you problem solve when you feel pain. You say, I don't want to feel pain because pain is an alarm bell, that something is not the way it ought to be. So it's my job to make it the way it ought to be by finding out what to do about it. Now that's a trial and error thing. Like solving problems is all about trial and error, because you don't know how to solve many problems, millions of problems. But the brain is supposed to be designed to help you to figure out how to solve these problems so that you do what? Have the most constructive result. Because problem solving is about having constructive results, unless your intent is incorrect. Like the white supremacists' intent is incorrect. They're the greatest problem solvers in recorded history. The white people who believe in racism, they are the smartest and most powerful people in recorded history. But by them being dedicated to mistreating one of the Creator's products, meaning people of color, they're dedicated to that. So they want to use their thinking ability, I say, wasting it by getting fun and glory and material comfort out of mistreating people based on color and dedicating their entire existence to that.
Okay, Mr. Fuller, let me ask you a question right there. At that spot right there, and you know you've been doing this for a long time, there are a lot of people that do not like what you just said, that white people are the smartest people in the on the entire planet. My question for that, asking for them, why do you say that, or what evidence do you have to support that statement that you just made?
I didn't say white people per se.
Okay.
I said the white supremacists.
Oh, excuse me, white supremacists. That's right. You did say
yes.
that.
Now, white supremacists are white people, but see, they are the people who have chosen among the white people. They are people who have chosen to be white supremacists. That's a choice. That's not something that just came with a package or something. That's something you have to work at. Being a white supremacist. Mm-hmm. Meaning what? What is a white supremacist? A person that believes in dominating and mistreating people who have color in their skin. That's what a white supremacist is. If a white person is not dominating and mistreating people because of color, either directly or indirectly in any area of activity, then that white person is not a white supremacist.
Okay.
White supremacy is something that you do. You have to deliberately be that.
Okay. But so, not all white people are, so then not all white people are white supremacists. Is that correct? That is correct. And I'm going to say this, too. There are a lot of black people who look like white people. Many black people have people that look like white people in their families. Their brothers and sisters look just like white people. Many. By the millions. So we can't be confused, see, because the white supremacists, they play on this confusion. See, so you look at the person, I've seen some black people whose skin color is just as white or whiter, whatever that means, as a person classified as white. Many of them. Albinos have white skin. What about that? I know some people who are classified as, or who are called, with that cliche term, albino. Their skin color is white. I'm looking at it. I know white when I see it, I guess. Most people do. Okay.
So, and you look at a white person standing next to him, and the person who is black, an albino, is whiter than the person who is classified as white. So what are we talking about here? We're talking about mind games. That's what we're talking about.
Yes.
And the white supremacists are experts at playing these mind games. Even black people get what? Confused. Because the first thing that a white supremacist does, which now I'm going to talk about why I say they're the smartest and most powerful people on the planet. Those white people who practice white supremacy. Because they can talk about, if they will, just what I just got through saying. But they don't even talk about that. They don't explain albinos or nothing like that. See, they got a code. They just don't explain it. And the albino gets on the elevator with a bunch of black people and white people, and the white people act like the albino is non-existent. Okay, I guess a lot of albino people who are called albinos have experienced that. That white people don't even look at them. They act like they're not even there. Because the albino is saying, I'm just as white as you are. Now, what about that? All right? I'm just as white as you are. Now, what about that? I'm white, but I'm black. All right? Now, let your mind deal with that.
Wow.
I'm black, but I'm white. All right?
Okay. Now, before we
you're
ask
white,
you about...
man, you're standing there with and I'm whiter than you are. Okay? I'm whiter than you are, and I'm an albino. Now, I'm looking at your skin. I'm looking at it. And you're looking at yours, you're looking at mine. Now what? Okay. I'm black, and you're white, but I'm whiter than you are. How about that?
How about
the rest of the black people, You know, we don't even think about it. And wait a minute, what's going on here? We don't even ask that question. What is this racism all about when you got albinos? Okay? I got a half-sister that's albino, maybe some black person will say. All right? Her mother was real dark-skinned, but, my sister is an albino. All right. Okay. I mean, let's talk. Let's talk. I mean, because black people are terribly confused about the whole thing, which goes to show you just how smart the white supremacists are, because we are more confused than anybody on the planet as black people when it comes to this thing called race.
Okay. Before I ask you about your book, just to be clear, if a person who is classified as being white, could they be suspected as being a white supremacist based on their skin color?
Yes, if they're classified as white, which is, first of all, that's what classification have to be. There are a lot of people who are classified as white that when you look at their actual skin color, and I know every black person has experienced this, how can you be white and be so dark? There's a whole lot of white people, millions of them. Let's tell the truth now, who are classified as white. They say they're white. Those are white people say that they're white. But they're darker than a whole lot of black people.
Mm-hmm.
See, that's what I mean by the confusion. The confusion. And the white supremacists have exploited the confusion. And they have not just exploited it, they have promoted it to perfection. Because the white supremacists are not confused about nothing.
Yes, sir.
They don't scratch their heads ever about anything. They got everything figured out when it comes to people of color. And people of color have nothing figured out.
Alrighty.
They got no idea what the white supremacists are doing or how they are doing it.
Okay. With that being said, turn our attention to your book and all the information that we need to get to your book. Go ahead, Mr. Fuller.
Oh, you can get the book by going to producejustice.com. And what will come up on the screen is a brief description of the 2016 basic textbook, revised expanded edition, and the original basic book. For some reason, I start running that off on the press because some people requested the 1984 edition. And even though the 2016 edition covers just about everything that's in the 1984 edition, some people want the 1984 edition too. I don't know why, but that's just the way it is. Some people have told me they just like the format. They find it easier to read or something. So maybe I can look into that and see if that format can be improved in the 2016 edition. But that's another story. But you can get the basic book or the original edition or both by going to producejustice.com. And the things that we've been talking about here on the program, excluding the albino part, I don't talk about that very much in the textbook, but I say it more today than is in the book. But on the wants and things like that and what black people should do about different situations, the book is directed to individual persons of color. It's a textbook, workbook for victims of white supremacy. That's one of the titles for the book. The longer title is the United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept. But that title doesn't mean anything until you read it in the front of the book. Those words are explained. The United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept. Because that explains, each word is explained in detail and what that's supposed to mean to the individual victim of racism. Also, there's a word guide there, too, telling you how to use words, how not to use words, what words to ask about about when other people use them. Like the word America. We shouldn't use the word America in the traditional sense, because the traditional way that the word is used doesn't make sense. And Africa doesn't have a definition at all, for the most part. So you give words that float around that don't have concise definitions should be given definitions. So the word guide does that. And these definitions are not just put there just to say, we're going to be different, or I'm going to be rebellious against the language or something like that. No, I'm going to make the language make sense, okay, by the words making sense. Like the word America, it just floats out there, and we sing songs about America, and we talk about pledges of allegiance to America, and we talk about it being anti-American without defining exactly what an American is and what an American isn't, okay? Because there is a definite definition, true definition for the word America and how a person of color should use it, and the word Africa, and the word Asia. And really, and you'll see this when you read the book, if you get the book, it says, what's the difference between an American, an African, and an Asian? And the way I put it in the book, there's absolutely no difference whatsoever, because it all means the same thing. And I explain why it does. Because I'm saying these terms on their own, the way that they are now, and the way you'll probably read about them in different types of books. These definitions, American, African, Asian, make no sense at all. None. Zero. But if you read it in the textbook for victims of white supremacy, they'll make sense in a way that you can use them to make sense in a constructive manner that will work for you as an individual, victim of racism, because that's what the whole book is about, addressed to the individual victims of racism. Go to producejustice.com, producejustice.com.
Okay. Let's see here. There's a couple of things we have to do here. Let's see, I got a couple of emails. The one on the previous email here, while I have time here, from Wesley, he said, Mr. Fuller, I truly appreciate the efforts that you put forth each week to make sure listeners are sharp with their codified behaviors. I concur with the previous caller in that the code book be made into a PDF for the masses to be able to use compensatory logic and have the code book in their cell phone devices. Mr. Fuller can still be paid with this method, also considering auto books and so forth. Okay. Thank you, Wesley, for that, for your response to that. Mr. Fuller, I'm supposed to ask you about the movie list, and somebody wanted to hear, when you spoke about the flag, what you said on previous shows concerning the flag. They like that, and they want to hear it again. I guess they're going to record it or maybe write it down. I think what we will do is, as we come to the conclusion of the first hour here on the Counter Racist Code Show with yours truly, Mr. Bobby, and Mr. Fuller, you can get in contact with the show by calling 516-453-9921, or you can Gmail me at the numeral 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, @gmail.com, and Mr. Fuller will answer your questions. So many Gmails. Don't forget, go ahead, call in for more information, and also you can go to producejustice.com for a full answer to any question you have, ordering books and materials and all that. All that and more. I think we're back. Okay. Okay. Welcome back to the Counter-Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. and yours truly, Mr. Bobby. To get in contact with the show, you can call 516-453-9921. We are pushing that so that you can actually get in contact with the show and ask Mr. Fuller your questions. Right now, I'm reading Gmails and answering and have Mr. Fuller answer your questions, but do that. And can tell your friends also that we are here at ProduceJustice.com. That's ProduceJustice.com. And there's all the information on that particular site that you can see, particularly ordering the books that Mr. Fuller just explained a few moments ago. Very, very, very important. Mr. Fuller, before I take the Gmail here, let's see here. I'm supposed to ask you, have you completed the movie list, and is there any other movies that you have seen recently that you are going to add to the movie list? People are really wanting that, Mr. Fuller.
I have completed that movie list, and on one program, I think I read the list. That was months ago.
Yeah, you did do that, yes.
Yeah, right. But I have to do some finishing touches, and also the people that I work with getting it on there have not made a final decision about putting it on there. But I've been talking about that for about 6 years now. That movie list is not better. That's ridiculous. So that's negligence on my part, really. That movie list should have been up 6 years ago. So I even stopped mentioning it because I keep running into all kinds of things that keep coming up, all kinds of things. I'm like that 8-ball that's on the top of the pool table, being knocked from one side to the other until, trying to stay out of the pocket,
Okay. Just stay out of the pocket. I like that. Okay. And finally, before we take this Gmail, you made a statement, I've heard it several times, but I like this statement, concerning the flag. A lot of people talked about, Colin Kaepernick and all that and all this flag controversy. But you made a statement even a few weeks ago concerning the flag. But for those who haven't heard it, what is your stance on the flag? Yes.
When we say the flag, the code position is, as far as, my contribution, quote, unquote, whatever that means, to the code concept is where the flag is concerned, it applies to what I call the universal flag, which I say is a question mark. Why? Because people come into the world asking questions. So I say a universal flag should be a question mark. Even for people who've never seen a question mark. Someone in their language might say, well, what is that? What does that mean? And you tell them it's a question mark. And you say, that's the universal flag. That applies all over the world to everybody, all the time, 24/7. That's the design that I made. I came up with that design maybe about 30 years ago. And I said, a universal flag, a flag that you can fly anywhere at any time, and it shouldn't offend anybody, and it fits anywhere, anytime, and you can pledge to it anywhere, anytime, and it shouldn't offend anybody, is a question mark. So I call that in capital letters, the universal flag for all of the people on the planet. And when you have a question about somebody putting up a statue, I'm going to give a practical example now. Like, you put up a statue of Andrew Jackson. slaveholder, and a person that believed in exterminating indigenous people, they say, the Native Americans, they call them. All right? Now, so if you put up a statue to him or anybody, rather than argue forever about whether to take the statue down, I'm just giving this as an example.
Yes, sir.
The codified recommendation is, well, leave the statue up. Since it's there, somebody put a big effort there. You don't change people's minds sometimes, for the most part, by taking a statue down. All right? They don't act any different from the way they acted from before the statue went up. You don't get that instant reaction. So if you're glorifying this person who is a slaveholder, and some people would say a racist, Andrew Jackson, for example, or Robert E. Lee, for example, here in the Northwestern Hemisphere, people who owned black slaves and believed in slavery, fought for it. So you're going to put up a flag, and they have a Confederate flag, they call it, right alongside of it. Well, rather than, if you don't want to take it down, and we can't agree on that, well, just add a flag. See? Sometimes if people don't want to do one thing, you do another. That's the law of compensation. So you say, okay, so we'll just, wherever you see a so-called Confederate flag or Confederate statue, just get permission to put alongside of it, on top of it, or around it, question marks. That's what I recommend. That makes sense. You know, and what would the question mark symbolize? Questions about why that statue is there, number one. And what does it represent? Because different people say, well, it represents my wonderful heritage. And another person says, no, that represents slavery. So now you've got a controversy. So wherever you have controversy, you should have question marks. That's why I say it's a universal flag. Okay? Now, in a previous program, and also here in the textbook, I say, now, how do you take a pledge to a flag? What is the universal pledge that goes along with that question mark? What is the universal pledge for any flag, regardless of what the flag looks like? The universal pledge, according to the code, what I have written, as a suggestion that would fit anywhere, anytime, and no one should get offended by it, or they should, if they are offended, they should explain why they are. Okay? But I'm saying it's a universal flag that settles all flag controversies. I don't think there'll ever be a flag pledge that is better than this one that I'm fixing to announce right now. Very short and to the point. The universal pledge to any flag, anywhere. Flags you've never seen before. You can take a pledge to them. And that pledge is as follows. I do at all times relate to the flag the exact same way that the flag relates to me. And you can even stretch that, because I saw some people, you know, probably in their minds, they didn't know whether to stand or sit down or do what. While I was watching and people listening to the Star-Spangled Banner, which isn't a flag, it's a song, okay? But you can, if you want to sing along with the song, you can, if you think the song tells the truth. But my recommendation, if you want to make a point of something else and not offend anybody, is just say, I do relate to this song the exact same way that this song relates to me.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
I mean, it makes sense, I think. You know.
Yeah.
And somebody might ask somewhere along the way, well, how does the flag relate to you? You do at all times relate to the flag the exact same way that the flag relates to you. Well, it sounds like you're being tricky. So how does that flag relate to you? And you repeat the same thing you said before because you already told them. I relate to the flag same way, exact same way that the flag relates to me. You have to be very exact in the words that you use.
Yes,
I do at all times relate to this flag the exact same way that this flag relates to me. Even if the flag is on the top of a pole or buried 9 feet under the ground, you're still relating to the flag the exact same way that the flag relates to you because you said you do it all times. At all times. Even when the flag decays, you're still relating to the flag the exact same way that the flag relates to you. So if a person wants to really pursue it and say, yeah, you're double talking, say something else because I don't understand that explanation and I don't accept that explanation. How does this flag relate to you? That's my question. Well, you're talking about always answer questions. Looks like you're evading that the question. How does the flag relate to you? And you can still say the same thing you said before. But if they want you to say something else and insist on it, there is a compensatory second explanation you can give. You can say, I don't know, but you can ask the flag. How does the flag relate to you? I don't know. But you can always ask the flag. I'm not stopping you from talking to the flag. I relate to the flag the exact same way the flag relates to me.
Yes.
I don't know what kind of relationship you got with the flag, but that's between you and the flag, sir. Oh, ma'am. Right.
Okay.
So you go over there and talk to the flag and ask the flag. Since you and the flag got a relationship, maybe the flag will tell you how the flag relates to me. Because I've already answered your question.
Yes, sir. Oh, okay. All righty. Let's do this. Let's go to the Gmail here. This comes from Braun. Says this, Mr. Fuller. Mr. Bobby, could you ask Mr. Fuller if he has seen the proliferation of black women with white men together as family units in commercials on TV? If so, what do you think this means, Mr. Fuller?
Well, according to the code, and this is in the book, anything, I think that the white supremacists may be involved in that. I don't know. It may be white people who are not white supremacists, all right? But I tend to believe that the white supremacists are involved in everything that has to do with a black person, okay? So here's what I have in the book, and this is what you say. To the extent that a white supremacist has anything to do with it, it is to promote the system of white supremacy. Promote or support the system of white supremacy. That's a standard answer you give to a lot of questions about things that are going on. You say, to the extent, and this quote is in several different places in the textbook, to the extent that a white supremacist has anything to do with it, it is to support the system of white supremacy, unquote. You can give that answer to a lot of things that seem kind of strange to you. You got questions about because it looks like it's racist. It looks like might have something to do with promoting racism. And if a white supremacist has anything to do with it, regardless of what it looks like on the surface, it might look like it's something against white supremacy. But if a white supremacist has anything to do with it, it's not against white supremacy. It's helping to support white supremacy. I won't say produce it because it's already been produced. It's helping to support white supremacy to the extent that a white supremacist has anything to do with it. So the question is, does a white supremacist have anything to do with these ads? You should suspect that they do. Why? because white supremacists have a lot to do with anything that involves people of color.
Okay.
They spend 24 hours a day making sure that they're on top of everything that has to do with anybody that has color in his or her skin.
All right. You are listening to the Counter-Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., and I'm the co-host, Mr. Bobby. To get in contact with the show, you may call 516-453-9921, or you may Gmail me at the numero 7, Mr. Bobby, B-O-B-B-Y, at gmail.com. This comes from our brother up in Canada, Victor Palmer. He says this, Mr. Fuller, Gmail. I was studying and reading what white supremacy is and how it works. I came across something that was written in stone that demonstrates that white supremacy exists. The Battle of Liberty Place Monument in Louisiana was erected in 1891 by the white-dominated New Orleans government. An inscription added in 1932 states that the 1876 U.S. presidential election, quote, recognized white supremacy in the South and gave us our state, end of quote. It was removed in 2017 and placed in storage. Now, he has a photo of that. I didn't really see a question in this, Mr. Fuller, but what say you concerning this?
Well, that's something that the person who wrote that email or Gmail in said, so that comes under VGQ. He's saying that he witnessed something or saw something and came to a conclusion about it. Now, if he's a person of color, he can come to that conclusion and present that information as it has been presented. That's all I have to say about it. And everybody who hears about it or knows about it should take it for what they think it's worth.
Mm-hmm. I haven't heard it. I didn't even know anything about that. I guess I would have to examine it, especially since it was erected back in the 1891, whatever that was, and then supposedly removed in 2017. I don't know about that, but he did have a picture of that. So, I guess we will move on to another email here. Let's see here. Let's do this one here. Let's see, Mr. Gatewood, yes. Okay, you just answered that question concerning the flag. Let's see here. How about this one? Oh, yeah, okay. Greetings, Mr. Fuller. How can we arrange to get your program, how can we get you, Mr. Fuller, to be a guest on a United Kingdom radio program? This comes from Mr. Lawson.
Whatever the proposal is, send it to producejustice.com. And
okay.
The people who make decisions about that will make the decision.
Okay, I'll have to type that to this person that did that. Okay, whatever the proposal is. Okay, let's do this one here. This comes from Petros. Okay, he says this. Let's do this. Okay, he says, Mr. Fuller, is it true that white supremacists are human peoples? And number two, if victims of white supremacists cannot concretely prove that they exist, how can they prove that a crime is being committed against them by these invisible white supremacists?
There's no way to prove the existence of white supremacy, in my opinion. No way to prove it. It takes a white person to prove the existence of white supremacy, which goes to show you how strong the system of white supremacy is. It's the world government. It's the strongest religion and the strongest political system ever invented in the minds of the people of the known universe in recorded history. I know of no religion, I know of none, that is stronger than the religion of white supremacy. I know of no political system, communism, whatever that means, socialism, whatever that means, capitalism, whatever that means, any kind of political system, and those are three that I've heard mentioned all down through the years. The white supremacists are all three of them. The white supremacists are the strongest, whatever definition you want to give, they're the strongest, the most efficient communists ever existed in recorded history. They are the most efficient and the smartest socialists. They know how to socialize. They know how to interact with people socially. I mean, to the max. Flawless. Better than anybody ever has in recorded history. Capitalism. They know all about how to get capital, how to make capital, how to define what capital is and what capital is not any minute of any day, and tell everybody of color what it is and what it isn't, and what they have to do to get it, and what they better not do to get it. The white supremacists know more about that than all of the non-white people combined on the planet. So they are the master capitalists, the master communists, the master socialists, and if name any of the world's religions, and there are thousands, they are masters of all of them put together, because what they say goes more than any of the so-called religious leaders of the world, who are in existence or have been in existence since the advent of the system of white supremacy. They overrule anybody that has to do with the affairs of people of color. So that makes them the most powerful people in recorded history and the smartest. Now, there are objections to that. People say, well, they're not smart, they're cunning. Well, see, that's a feel-good trip. You can switch the words around, but it all boils down to who tells you what to do, and you better do it. That's what I ask any non-white person on the planet. Who tells you ultimately what to do, and you had better do it? And you don't have anybody that you can go and get that can say, don't do that. And if you have any problem with anybody telling you against what I just said, come and get me, and I'll take care of them. And you say, well, the white supremacists told me to do this. Now, you tell any of that to any non-white person anywhere on the planet, and see what their response is going to be, other than one of these days, I'm going to get in position to take care of it. That one way or another, that's what always comes up. One of these days, next generation. Well, the next generation will straighten that out. Or somebody will straighten it out in the hereafter. Or somebody on the other side of the universe. But I can't do it. Bottom line is, that's what they'll tell you. There's nothing I can do about that. You better just think about it and try to figure it out yourself. Well, I can do that. All right? Anybody can do that. That's what Fuller does. Try to figure your way. Because Fuller's in the same prison of the system of white supremacy. I've seen nobody overrule the white supremacists. So for the people who say it ain't no such thing as white supremacy, I say, who tells you what to do if you're a person of color, one way or another, in any area of activity? And you'd better do it. Economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. I've seen no one of color that the white supremacists say, you're going to have to do this. Now, I'll let you do some things. I'll let you do some things. But there's some things I'm not going to let you do. And I've seen no one overrule them of color, ever. And when somebody says they know of that happening, I want to know when this happened, because I haven't heard about it. There's lots of things I haven't heard about.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know of no people anywhere who of color, people who have color in their skin, and they have overruled the white supremacists. That's what I mean by smart. Now people say, well, that's not smart, that's evil. Well, you can be smart and be evil.
Yeah.
If you stop and think about it. I mean, being evil doesn't rule out being smart. Now, if you say being good, now that's a different thing. Once you establish what are the qualifications for a good person, because we haven't even gotten that straight yet. None of the religious leaders have gotten that straight. What is a good person? What actually makes a good person? Right down to the wire, in every sense. What is a good person? G-O-O-D. As many religions as we have on the planet. No one defines what a good person is. So far. As far as I know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. All righty. Let's see. Gmail here. Oh, by the way, this is the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., and I'm the co-host, Mr. Bobby. To get in contact with the show, call 516-453-9921. Yes, that is 516-453-9921 to get in contact with the show and ask Mr. Fuller your question. We are primarily focusing on a code, the code. You have to operate with the code. And Mr. Fuller, for almost an hour and a half, has been giving different examples of that and answering your questions. And for more information, you can also go to producejustice.com, and he will answer. Oh, you can submit questions there and find out the latest information that you may inquire about, and it is on there. In a few moments, we will have Mr. Fuller discuss his book and the materials that you can get. But before we do that, let's see here. No, I won't do that. That's Victor. Victor, I'll get to you a little bit later. We have a question from Mr. Johnson. He says this, Mr. Fuller. First of all, he says, greetings to you. He says, due to constant infighting, the black media personalities have displayed throughout the recent months, it seems we have been taking giant steps back after long strides in the push for reparations and black economics. And everyone doesn't fully understand what having a code is. My question to you, Mr. Fuller, is there any, and he capitalized that, is there any way for you to reappear on the national platform to provide your suggestion on replacing white supremacy with justice? I know your stance on not showing your face, but as you know, we are visual creatures, and you appearing on a national outlet, i.e. the Breakfast Club or whatever, MSNBC, would provide a new solution and way of thinking that a lot of black folks have never considered. Your appearance, Mr. Fuller, would be monumental. Having a code, and he capitalized that C-O-D-E, is the only way at this point in time, and no other person than you should explain it before anything happens. Please consider this, Mr. Fuller. This comes from Gamo Gittens out in your neck of the woods, Mr. Fuller. Washington, D.C. gave his address on Cage Street and also gave his telephone number.
Yes, well, in answer to the question of me emphasizing me as a person, that is not in line with the code objective. That's why we need a compensatory code. We have people out here with name recognition. We have people who, in this month, February, in the Northwestern Hemisphere, they have African History and Culture Month and Black History Month, we call it. And we have numerous people who people can look at if you just want to look at somebody. But I'm trying to get people to look at something we haven't been looking at. We've been looking at people, this person, that person, this minister, this reverend, this professor, this doctor. Some people have even given me the title of doctor. I never cured anybody of anything. So I'm trying to say that I'm not saying that people who have name recognition and face recognition shouldn't be recognized. All of the people that you see, the pictures on the postage stamps and all like that. But I'm trying to get people to look at themselves as the solution. Not Neely Fuller. Neely Fuller is not the solution to anything. Neely Fuller is trying to get people to follow what he's trying to follow, and doing a raggedy job of that. And that is what? What is it I'm trying to follow? The logic that the creator of the universe put into the universe for people to follow. What does the people who are supposed to be a leader, what does that person follow? That person follows logic. Logic is a way, what is logic? Choosing what to do and what not to do. That's logic. That's all it is. Choosing what to do, what not to do. Choosing to look at a problem for what it really is and coming up with a solution to that problem. Now, that's what everybody on the planet, each and every day, is supposed to be doing. That's the codification. Okay. Each and every individual. Put the emphasis on yourself and stop looking for some strange face to come over the mountain. And I understand where this comes from. This comes from the way that black people have been taught, and white people are taught that. They have been taught to sit by the window and watch for, in the system of white supremacy, a white knight to come over the mountain.
Okay.
On a white horse.
On a white horse.
Waving a silver sword.
Okay. We have to pause here, Mr. Fuller, so hold that thought here, and we'll come back to that. You're listening to the Counter-Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. and Mr. Bobby, heard right now at ProduceJustice.com. That's ProduceJustice.com. And when you go to that site, and you should go to that site, you'll see all the information about the books and all the other materials that you can encounter. You can, they are for purchase. And if you want to get in contact with the show, you can do so by calling 516-453-9921. You can also get in contact with the show by giving my Gmail, which is 7mrbobby@gmail.com. And you can do that. And that'll be really, really a good thing. That way you can get all the latest information and some questions as the people have been calling in, or rather have been Gmailing me. We have a lot of Gmails today, and that means a lot of people are listening, and we do thank you. But you can also call in. We would like to hear your voice if you can. 516-453-9921. That is the number that you call to get into the show. We can hear you live and go on from there. The Counter-Racist Code Show, CRCS. I'm going to try to brand that into your memory. CRCS, the Counter-Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. and co-host Mr. Bobby. Okay. Let's see here. We will continue on with the show there, Mr. Fuller. Going through a lot of these Gmails here. Okay. Let's see here. Let me pull this up. Okay. All right, Mr. Fuller. This comes from, it's the GG8. Yeah. She says this. Can you please, Mr. Bobby, ask Mr. Fuller the following questions should be raised. Mr. Fuller, according to the code written by you, the term religion refers to a strong belief backed up by action. Therefore, Mr. Fuller, is it correct to say that if the belief in producing justice is backed up by action, is it also a religion?
Is it also what?
Is it also a religion?
A belief system backed up by action?
Okay, she
Wait a
says
minute.
according to the code that you have written, the term religion refers to a strong belief backed up by action. Therefore, is it correct to say that if the belief in producing justice is backed up by action, is it also a religion?
Yes. Yes, that's what a religion is. You know, that's basically a compensatory definition. A lot of people may not agree with that. That doesn't qualify for a religion. But a strong belief backed up by action. That's what a religion should be. That's a compensatory definition. All religions should be a strong belief backed up by action. In other words, if people go around and say, well, I believe this, and I believe that, and I believe in this religion, okay, well then you ask the logical questions. What does your religion require you to do? What's the name of your religion? That's number one. If it has a name, some religions may not have a name, so I don't know. But most religions have a name. So what's the name of your religion? And then the next question is, what does your religion require you to do? Because I don't know of a religion that doesn't have some requirements. I haven't heard of any. Got some requirements. Might be just 2 or 3 requirements. Or it might be 2 or 3,000 requirements. So, you know, do you do all of those things that your religion requires you to do? Because if you don't, there should be serious doubts on the part of people who you tell that that is your religion. They should doubt you about just about anything that you might say. Why? Because when you don't tell the truth about your own religion, in most cases, people voluntarily adopt a religion. But if you don't practice the thing that you say you have adopted, why would a person believe you when you say anything about anything? Because you're being misleading now. Unless you tell people, well, I'm trying to practice my religion. That's a different thing. You put that try in there. Okay, that's a different thing altogether. But when you say this is my religion, and everything required in my religion, I do it right to the letter 24 hours a day without fail. You never see me doing anything that's not according to my religion. That's a strong belief backed up by action. So if you practice justice, that is a religion. But justice isn't practiced by anybody in the known universe. Why? According to the code and according to logic, because everything in counter-racist code should be based on truth and logic, which are intertwined. And if a person says that justice is his or her religion, that person, according to the code, is not telling the truth, because that person cannot practice justice in a system of white supremacy. That's impossible. Why? Because the system of justice is committed to non-justice. The system of white supremacy, rather, is committed to non-justice, meaning guaranteeing that people are being mistreated. In order to have justice, you have to have 2 things. is mistreated. No one. Ever. That's number one. Number two, guaranteeing that the person that needs help the most gets the most constructive help. Now, that doesn't exist anywhere on the planet called Earth. So you can't have the religion of justice anywhere on the planet Earth, because you got people being mistreated all the time, and you got people who need help all the time by the millions, and they are not getting the constructive help that they need.
Okay. I'll tell you what, Mr. Fuller, I believe we have a caller on the line, if I'm looking at this correctly, and I may pronounce the name incorrectly. Pianki, you are live on the line with Mr. Fuller. You say you don't believe in the code?
Yeah, the line open.
Yeah, go ahead now. Yeah, go ahead. You can't.
I don't believe too. You know, as I listen to him, there's some logical things that he's stating, but I never have believed in the concept that of this white supremacy. I look at white supremacy as this: when you look at the faces behind offshore oil well drilling, the faces behind equity, leveraged buyouts and boycotts and sanctions. Yeah, the majority of the time those faces are white. But I believe and have demonstrated that you compete in those areas where the majority of the faces is white and carve out your piece of the pie that's existing. And that competition do work. You know, give you an example on the big. I was a structural steel erector. I put up buildings. My company that I own put up buildings like the one that fell during 9/11 in New York. And I entered the market and studied, having worked in the business area for, nearly 20-some odd years. And then I said I was going to do my own company in doing the same thing. And I took pieces of market share from other contractors, and I established my own piece of the pie. And, give you a bigger picture. Look at shipbuilding. The top shipbuilders, the top 10 are all Asians. But it wasn't that way all the time. Shanghai, Singapore, Shenzhen, no European country in shipbuilding comes along as far as the data is concerned until way down at the bottom of the list, or, at least around the 20th. So it was a market that was there that was controlled by quote-unquote white faces that they put their plan together and took their market share, and, it continues today. So if people believe that they can't do because this thing called white supremacy, actually, for my justice, has worked out fine because that's less competitors I have to deal with. But some of the things you say I do subscribe to, but I just don't subscribe to. Other words, the way people listen to you or read the text of your father's book, I think that's what you said. They're using it the wrong direction.
Okay, Mr. Fuller, would you care to respond to what he said?
VGQ. That comes under Victims Guaranteed Qualification. He's qualified to say that there is no such thing as white supremacy. And for those who believe that, act accordingly. Or you can believe there is such a thing as white supremacy, but according to what I have written, you're supposed to be opposing it by doing whatever you can that is of constructive value. But I'm just saying, directly, indirectly, if you're a person of color, it has to be approved of by the white supremacists. There are people who built all kinds of ships and all kinds of things of color all over the world as we speak now. And as far back as the time I've been on the planet and even before that, there are billionaires, many of them, of color. That's obvious. But I'm saying it's because the white supremacists say it's okay with them, for whatever reason they choose. And on the plantations, there were some black people in the big house who wore clothes and ate better food than millions of white people. Why? Because the white supremacists in the big house, the slave owners, said that they could do that. Come over here, boy, and you see these boots over here? I got about 5 pair of them, and because you're one of my favorite slaves, you can take a pair of my favorite boots. Now, many a white person will never wear a pair of boots like that. Now, these are obvious things. No one can deny that. And that black person will go clumping around in those boots, showing them off to other black people on the plantation, and say, no black people got no boots like this. Nowhere on the planet. And very few white people. And that black person who is a slave would be telling the truth. So it's no different in the modern world if you understand white supremacy. That's what I mean by understanding white supremacy. But those boots in the possession of that black person had to be okayed by the white supremacists. Otherwise, no boots. That's the white supremacy. That's the evaluation that I give to the system of white supremacy, and I think it's correct. Black people can do all kinds of amazing things, go to the moon and back and whatnot, but only under the authorization, with the okay stamp from someone who is white, directly and indirectly, and who is also a white supremacist. Otherwise, what anyone will say what it will mean when people say there's no such thing as white supremacy, they would be telling the truth, which means that I'm writing my book. And on this program, I'm saying something that's flat out not true. And I shouldn't be on this program, because I shouldn't be, nobody should be allowed to talk who's not telling the truth. I mean, and if they're allowed to talk, it should be pointed out that they're not telling the truth. And a lot of people say that there's no such thing as white supremacy. And people can say that. But I believe there is such a thing as that. Mm-hmm. And I believe it is the strongest government that the world has ever seen.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Did you want to respond to that, or is that it?
Yeah, I want to see, you're sounding as if it wasn't no whites on what we call white on the planet, then this thing that you call white supremacy wouldn't exist. But I, once again, have to disagree, because when I build buildings according to the customer's specification, no matter who that customer was. It could be white, it could be black. And if they want to, I give them a cost to do it based on what they say they want. Now, once I sign a contract and they say that they want something different, it's going to either cost more or less. White person don't have to be no place in the scene. Now, you want to say, well, they had to get a building permit, and it was a white person there in the clerk's office that issued the building permit. You're talking about something that just can't be eliminated, because there's going to always be whites on the planet, hopefully. Always going to be blacks on the planet. Hey, you can go into Nigeria, where I do ports for. I don't see any whites that's controlling what it is, that the activities that I want to do. So I agree with you when you say a person believe in something and show that you believe in it by action. You're absolutely right. If you don't have any action, I look at religion as being nothing more than the deification of an ethnic group's culture, something that they have showed due diligence in, something that they have put into effect, and then they religionize it. This is religion. This is how it's going to be. But thank you very much, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much for your phone call. Okay, Mr. Fuller, I want to do two things here. First of all, in the remaining 10 minutes that we have left, or 9 in this program, I want you to read this statement that you made back in 1971 that is in the front of your book, The United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept, the Revised Expanded Edition. I want you to read that statement, and then I want you to speak about your book. Do you have that statement in front of you, Mr. Fuller? I know you
I have it in front of me. I'll read it.
Yes, sir.
If you do not understand white supremacy, racism, what it is, and how it works, everything else that you understand will only confuse you. I'm going to say that again. If you do not understand white supremacy, racism, what it is, and how it works, everything else that you understand will only confuse you. Now, that's a flat statement that I made, and I can understand that people don't understand the power of the white supremacists. And that's why we argue with each other about even whether or not white supremacy exists. Because we are confused about what it means and how it works. If you do not understand what it is and how it works, you will be confused. And the white supremacists are the masters of confusion, because they know how to make it look like they don't even exist. That goes to show you just how smart they are and how powerful they are, that you're looking right at them operate, standing right there looking at them, doing their bidding, going according to their rules. That's supremacy. Not making up your own rules and say, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that and nobody's going to stop me. Oh, if you're a person of color, you're going to get an okay, whether you know that you're getting an okay from them or not, if you're on the planet Earth. Now, for those who don't understand that, and it's understandable that we wouldn't, I didn't understand it. I just stumbled up on it by trying to eliminate the idea that there was such a thing. I wanted to non-believe. There's no such thing as white supremacy. I started off wanting that not to be. But me wanting it not to be didn't help me. It was only when I began to realize that it is, I began to make sense to myself. Rather than going around in a circle, and going crazier and crazier, which is what I say is going to happen when a person really believes there's no such thing as white supremacy. We're already crazy, because to be in a crazy system, which is what racism is, it's just as crazy as it can be, to have a world dominated by people who believe that people who have color in their skin are supposed to be mistreated. That is crazy. And so if those people have the power that they have, and I say they have maximum power, they don't have all power because they are not the Creator. The Creator has all power. The Creator created all of us. But they have the secondary power. They are the most powerful creatures. If the Creator is a creature, second to none, other than the Creator. They have proven that in every area of activity according to the evidence, not according to Neely Fuller. I always tell people, don't believe anything that Neely Fuller says. Just walk around on this planet and check it out yourself if you're a person of color. And you have to answer to the white supremacists, whether you recognize that you're answering to them one way or another, directly and indirectly, in every area of activity.
Yes, sir. Okay, now, this is real important here, Mr. Fuller. I need you to talk about your book. We've got about 3 minutes here. I need you to talk about your book, the materials, how can you get it, can you get the book overseas, any information. I need you to speak about your book.
Well, overseas you can get it in the UK, I understand, by going to producejustice.com. Now, if there's any complications there, well, you just have to keep going to producejustice.com because, like I said, a lot of changes have been made with me, favorable and unfavorable, recently, and so, and that's a continuing thing anyway, pluses and minuses. But you can get the book by going to producejustice.com here in the Northwestern Hemisphere, what we call the United States of America. Go to producejustice.com, and the method for ordering is right there. Mm-hmm. Now, there are 3 volumes that are there. It's all really the same book. When I was trying to write it, I kept insisting that I have one book, not a bunch of books scattered all over the place, because part of my code is one problem, one book. You got a race problem, put everything that you have to say in that one book. Don't have a lot of this and that and the other scattered all over the place. But the people who handle the book said, well, this book will be too thick for anybody to carry around. Well, I wanted a book you could carry around, all right? And that print would be too small. I didn't want small print. I want somebody to be able to see the print.
Yes, sir.
And so it wound up being 2 volumes, basically, and that is the Revised Expanded Edition, which is the latest volume, updated volume of the 1984 edition, and that's the 2016 edition. That's on that website. And then there's a word guide, which is an addition to the Revised Expanded Edition, because books consist of words, but I needed a word guide because one of the titles in the book, part of the title is compensatory, meaning making up for the meaning of words in a way that the words will make sense, because so many words don't make sense in what we call the English language. They don't make sense to whom? To victims of white supremacy, because the language, the English language is made, many words are used in such a way as to support the system of white supremacy. Take the example of the word fair, F-A-I-R. Fair, in the English language, is associated with the word justice, even though they don't spell alike. Justice is J-U-S-T-I-C-E. Fair is F-A-I-R. But they say if you treat a person fairly, you're treating that person justly. That's the implication. But the word fair also means what? White. My fair lady. Oh, she's fair complexion. See, so the white supremacists, I suspect, take that word fair, which a lot of people think in terms of whiteness, and say it's the same as justice. So in order to get justice, you have to go to someone who's white.
Yes.
See,
Mr. Fuller, I apologize. We're going to have to leave it there
right, because
I hear the music in the background, and that means that the hour has come to an end. Boy, that was a fast hour.
Go to producejustice.com.
Yes, sir. Thank you,
Okay.
Mr. Fuller, for your information. Thank you, callers, for calling in. And we'll be back next week with more of the Counter Racist Code Show, CRCS, with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. and your co-host, Mr. Bobby. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.